So here we are. Question that I have in my mind is, why do people hurt each other? Can anyone answer that? Why do people hurt each other? Isn't it the oddest thing? But so crazily common. I'm trying to actually, digest that fact. I guess I was thinking about it because I saw this. I mean, I have to admit, I sometimes get videos on Facebook. Someone sent like a video of a whale, a humpback whale. I wouldn't look at these videos, but it was a whale, so, I had to watch it. And my weakness, whale videos. Some people like little kittens. I like whales videos.
That's how we make sure you read our emails. Whale and then
send the whale. So it was like this big humpback whale. I mean, they're huge, right? And there was this scientist who was swimming, and the whale kept coming up to her and pushing her and pushing her and pushing her, and she was feeling kind of scared. Didn't understand what was going on, and kept like taking his fin and pushing her, and this is this major. It's like, think of a double bus gently nudging you, okay? And you can't resist because the mass of it is so intense. And she was screaming for help. She didn't know, trying to get to her research boat, and eventually she was getting to the boat, and then lo and behold, there was like a shark fin coming, and she realized that the whale was actually pushing her out of danger. And it's like this cross-species care, if you can imagine. And of course, then there's other instances where she's seen it, like where a big whale was actually protecting a seal from. I mean, it's quite amazing, and it's really inspiring and lovely and everything. But you're not going to see that whale like hitting its friend. I mean, they're not going to get in a fight. Maybe they do. I don't know actually, but. But here you have this whale who's helping this human. So I started to think, a whale's doing it for not only a stranger, but like another creature, another species. And not only another species, but in maybe whale memory, it's not so long ago that it probably lost a relative to a harpoon, of that same species that is trying to help, trying to save. I thought about people. How does it happen? The definition of cancer is it's a cell that has a mutation and starts doing harming the host body rather than helping it. So in a sense, violence is kind of like cancer. It's actually harming the host body. How does that happen? What is the mutation that is in a human mind that will cause violence? This is what I'm trying to understand, so that we can try to find the cure to this cancer, which is violence. Now, so how does it happen? I mean, I don't have an answer. I'm asking you. What causes violence? Why would someone hurt someone else? You have an idea, Tom?
Mm-hmm. It's not a good one. It's not a happy one. Just imagining our forefathers 20, 50,000 years ago. It's not the good ones who stayed alive.
Survival of the fittest?
I put the last ones. Yeah.
Survival
They had to
of
work
the
for it.
violence.
So their heritage is with us, I'm afraid.
Well, on the one hand, like we have that example that the only way you survive is by killing the competition. I think there's some bird or something that when two chicks are born, one of them, they fight and the one that wins eats the other one, and that's how they survive. But but we're not birds, okay? Like, we're not birds. If they don't have a choice, that's like pure instinct, you know. We like to think we're beyond instinct. And look what happens. So we can go from a general question like that, which then, you know, it makes it theoretical and distant. So 50,000, 100,000, 500,000 years ago, when people were like starting to fight over their tribal area to make sure they were able to get these animals and not the competition. Yeah, I can get that. Then it's just fed into our culture. We just inherit it. And we grow up with that. So like, you know, Nelson Mandela, he famously said, like, no one is born hating another, right? You learn it. But how do we learn these things? You know, you take a baby that's born, and some babies that grow up end up like going into a school and killing their fellow students or whatever, right? I mean, how the hell does that happen? You know, I mean, at some point it was a baby who just would smile at you if you smiled, you know. I mean, it could have happened that they just grew up smiling. But instead they grew up killing. How does that, you know? It's actually quite remarkable. Because everybody had like a good chance. Like everyone had a good chance, you know? You were born and you could become anything. And yet, there are some people who grow up with unfortunate circumstances, don't end up being killers, and some people who grow up in good circumstances end up committing terrible violence. Right? So then it can't just be like pure conditioning, because how do we account for these differences? So we can postulate, like we can imagine, okay, well, there's the past karma, you know, the past life. That, you know, they just like are reborn with the karmic imprint, which is so tremendous, and just get pushed along. We can say that. But again, it's all theoretical, right? I mean, how do we know and what do we know? So where are we going to understand violence? This is like the real question for us, is how do we understand it? So Martin Luther King Jr., he said, you know, nonviolence is not just not killing someone, okay? It's not hating them. So it's going from the outer violence to understanding the inner violence. The outer violence is a symptom of something that's been going on inside for a long time, right? It doesn't just happen. It's like the final breakthrough. So if we want to understand violence and the source of violence, we have to, as we say, you know, bring it home. So I want us to be a little bit sincere in our practice. Meaning the practice of looking within and finding the roots of violence in your own mind. It's so easy to blame society, to say we're conditioned to feel this way and to act this this way. But as soon as you blame society, you're helpless. Right? I mean, there's nothing you can do about it because, believe me, society's not going to change. It's been like this for millennia. Okay. So I want us to take one moment. And I don't want to think about our whole lives. I want us to be really specific and to examine today. I would like us to take one day in your life. And that day is really recent. In fact, we're still in it. Can we just, today is the 21st of May, and it's Monday. So can we just consider for one moment now, each of us, to take 1 minute and just observe and perhaps recognize if in your day there were any expressions of internal violence, anger, aggression, even fear, hostility, judgment, whatever however it manifested, whatever you want to call it. Let's just take 1 minute and just be a bit sincere in this one day when you woke up to this moment. Irritation, hostility. So, you don't have to dwell, there's no guilt, there's no, that's the real difference in our practice, is that you're not beating yourself up by saying, oh, God, I'm so judgmental and so whatever. So much aggression. Well, welcome to the club, the human club of unenlightened beings. Is to experience on a daily level internal violence. And we need to call it violence because otherwise we're softening it and we're saying, yeah, it's okay to be like judgmental and irritated and stuff. Yeah, those are softer names for it, but actually you're committing violence to your own mind. What is anger? The Buddha compared anger to holding on to a coal, right? You think it's going to give you heat, but just touching it, it actually burns you. Whoever's holding it, that's the person who's going to be hurt, guaranteed, right? Anger hurts, first and foremost, the person experiencing it. Can we recognize that violence experienced is primarily causing harm to your own mind? It gets to the point that it's externalized, of course. You cause enough harm and it just can't be contained. Recognizing that you're causing harm by your difficult states then can be in itself a source for compassion. You don't want to hurt, you don't want to be in pain, you don't want to suffer. But your states of mind are causing you to. Feeling bad about that means you want to change it. We sometimes have these mistaken concepts of like righteous anger, justified anger. I have a right to be angry, because I'm want for positive change. So, I'll be angry because there's injustice going on. someone else is hurting someone else and I'm going to be angry at them. Well, it sounds reasonable, doesn't it? Until you take the practice and you examine your own mind. Right? When you examine the mind that is angry, you see that actually it's not beneficial and it doesn't produce any positive change. There can be sadness, there can be compassion, there can be urgency and extreme care. But anger, it's just going to burn your mind. It's going to burn you. It's a cold that you're holding on to. So, in the even pre-Buddhist teachings, and what Buddhism took on was the principle of ahimsa. Okay, and what is that? Ahimsa is non-violence. 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 Famously practiced by Mahatma Gandhi. And it goes from the ancient Hindu teachings, but it's this, him is, in the Sanskrit, him is like to strike, himsa is to strike out at someone else, and ahimsa is to just not strike out, to not strike out. Practicing non-striking out. When we understand that it's only, the external is only the outer form of that it's really purifying your mind so that we're not walking around in a constant state of judgment. Judgment, we have to call it for what it is striking out at others. When you judge others and you put yourself above, it's an act of violence. And we can soften and say, I'm just being judgmental. But let's call it for what it is. It's reinforcing a violent state of mind. And what is that state of mind based on? Where does the violence come from in the mind? Well, if you judge someone else or yourself, basically you've identified something, or you're observing or focusing on something that you don't like, right? That you don't like. You don't like it strong enough, it creates a strong sense of what's called aversion. Dislike, strong dislike. Walking around with a disliking mind, right? That's aversion. It's also considered a fire or a poison. Burns. And it feels familiar enough that we think it's okay. This is the difficult aspect of aversion, anger, and judgment, is that we experience it so often that it almost feels normal. It's like normal to walk around judging the world because I'm right. Where did I get that from? We never question our rightness. Okay? Do you ever stop and say, what have I been thinking? Like, who am I anyway? To be walking around judging the whole world and thinking they're wrong. Even if I know I'm right. Like there's harm being done, so I'm going to get angry at it. What we're missing here is the skill of compassion, which asks, what's the best way to help? How is this state of mind going to help the situation? Is it going to change anything? Or is it just reinforcing my sense of being better? If you think you're better than others, you're actually harming yourself. You're harming yourself. You're not harming that. So ahimsa, non-violence. First and foremost, where do we start? Just like with compassion and metta, we start with ourselves. You want to stop harming yourself, your own state of mind. That's where we start. Stop committing acts of violence to yourself. I don't just mean someone who's cutting their arms or something. I just mean someone who's cutting their mind. Yeah, I read this nice comment by, I mentioned this to Rory on the way, that Nelson Mandela once was called a saint because he resisted seeking revenge from his tormentors. Okay, he resisted. And so they created this whole reconciliation committee approach to ending apartheid, was that, you know, if you could sort of just come clean with what you've done, then you're on your road to healing. The real punishment is just to really fully acknowledge, that's what they were saying, to the perpetrators of violence from, you know, from the oppressors. You know, you just fully acknowledge it, then you'll know what you have to work on. Now he was called a saint, and he said, well, no, I'm not a saint, but if you mean a sinner who keeps trying, then yeah. Okay. So I was reading a book by a believing Christian man yesterday. He was a doctor who died because he got cancer. He said he was always an atheist, and he always had problems with the Christian teaching of original sin. You know, that you're born a sinner. Until he finally understood, well, actually, all it meant is that you have more work to do. You have more work to do, right? If you're alive, there's more work to do. On what? On your mind. On your own tendency to hurt others. We have a strong tendency to hurt. Okay? We call it survival. Whatever. So, you know, we have more work to do. So one of the ways the Buddha taught about not causing harm was he went through not causing harm with body, not causing harm with speech, and not causing harm with mind. And those three levels are very helpful and useful for us to examine how we do cause harm. What I mean by causing harm with the body doesn't necessarily mean you're gonna, you know, hit somebody. But do you experience at some point in the day the roots of violence in your body? You know, like when you get really agitated, or there's strong energy, or you just want to explode, right? What's going on in your body? Can you pause and recognize that there's violence flowing through your body? Right? You have to acknowledge that and call it for what it is. Right? Someone bumps into you. Someone even hits you. You stub your toe, and you just want to, like, what happens to me? Stub my toe, I want to destroy the rock. You know? And what's with the rock? There's that story, I think it's in the teachings, yeah, about the people who are rowing a boat. They're rowing a boat, and it's in the fog, and they see another boat coming towards it, and it's coming closer, and they're not moving, and they're shouting, "Get out of the way, get out of the way." And they're getting so angry, how can they do this? They're going to hit us. Get close, they just avert by a few centimeters, you know, being hit and sunk. And they see that the boat's empty, it's drifting. There's no one in the boat. And they just were so angry, they just wanted to kill the people who were, like, coming right at them. You know? You ever bump into something and you just get angry at the object? How'd that happen? Violence in the body, you know? You feel discomfort. You feel discomfort. You feel pain. And we get angry? Come on. But it's so common It's so common. So notice that when it arises, you can't start healing these problems before we start fully acknowledging them. And that's what the reconciliation committees were in South Africa. They're like, you know what, just put your cards on the table and we'll deal with it then. So acknowledge when you feel violence of the body, right? Someone offends you and you want to hit them, you want to punch them in the face, you won't do that, like you won't. But you want to? Acknowledge that. Acknowledge it, right? Be with that and name it for what it is, okay? Violence in speech. Yeah? Okay? Next time you want to curse somebody, you want to curse yourself. Okay? The anger that comes up and you want to express it through speech. And it's so common. It's so common. People swearing at each other, feeling like it's cathartic. Do you know what catharsis is? It's another name for rehearsal. You're rehearsing the next time that you're going to do the same thing, right? Catharsis is not letting out steam. It's just practicing it for the next time. It's reinforcing negative karma. That's what catharsis is. When you feel you got to let out this anger, come on. It's just reinforcing it as a behavior. So notice when violence in the form of speech or the desire to speak violently arises. And notice how much violence there is in speech around you. Okay? Just like open your ears. Notice it not only in yourself, but around us. There's so much violence in the way people communicate. Right? Aggression that is expressed through discourse, through speech. And you notice that instead of like it being contagious, you can develop the sense of, wow, amazement. Amazement. Look at this field of violence we're walking through. Walking on the street and there's so much. And instead of feeling like judgment, there can be a shift to compassion. There can be that shift. But you first have to see where you are. You have to recognize it. Recognize it in yourself, recognize it in your world. And then of course there's violence of mind, okay, of thought. Violence of thought. Notice the agitation, notice the mind states that arise when basically you are experiencing one of the three states of, of fires, of poison. Okay, one of the things that provokes the violence within us, which is the strong dislike, the strong like, and the delusion, thinking that, I am really separate and important. Okay, the delusion meaning the sense of separate selves that we have, that like, me, right? Look out for number one, we say. The attachments. How does violence come up with attachment? Because I want this and you're in my way. That's how it comes up. Okay? A parking spot, right? I mean, whatever it is. Like, I want it, you're in my way. Violence. An aversion. I don't want it and you've got it. Okay? So these three states of mind give birth and reinforce karma of violence in body, speech, and mind. And we should watch them. We should locate it and observe it whenever it comes up. Fearlessly. Okay, you need a bit of bravery. Not bravery to fight, bravery to acknowledge. Think how much it took for some prison guard in South Africa to come up in front of like a black judge and say, you know what, I killed like 20 people, right? I mean, think about what it would take for this person to come up in front of an audience and say, yeah, I beat so many people, right? Think about that. And not just because I want to avoid prison and get free. We have to learn from some pretty good examples. Within recent history, right, it can be done. We can face our fears. There's a story of a monk in Japan named Bankei. He had a large monastery, and was very famous. People from all over Japan would come and study with him. And during some of the sessions, some of the students complained that one of the monks, or one of the students, was stealing things. How can that be? So he ignored it. And then, more time would pass, and someone else would accuse this monk of stealing. Happened a few times and Bankei, of course, ignored it. He'd hear it and say, okay. It's like, I'll deal with it. But things kept disappearing. Until finally the monks passed around, or the students passed around a petition, and it said to Bankei, either you expel him, you get rid of this monk, or we're leaving. Right? It's him or us. He read the letter, and he called everybody into the assembly, into the great hall. And he said, all of you sitting here, you know the difference between right and wrong. And if you leave this monastery, you can go somewhere else and learn. You'll be fine. But this guy, where is he going to go? And upon hearing that, the monks, of course, they changed their minds, and the thief changed his ways through a lot of tears. It says in the koan that his eyes were streaming with tears. Why were they streaming with tears? It was probably the first time in his life that somebody offered some compassion for his acts of violence. First time that somebody said, I actually care about you. So when the Dalai Lama, at his acceptance speech in 1989 for the Nobel Prize, he said, one of the passages was, he said, I hold no hatred for the people who have destroyed my country and killed my people. Because I know how much they too suffer. Now, what's remarkable about his statement is that he wasn't denying the violence that they have been doing, that they've done. And if there's anything that you would think would be justified to hate, is when someone's killing someone else, as so many of his own people have experienced. He refused to go down that road. It's just going to add more hatred to the hatred they have. What's going to help? What's really going to help? I've told this before, where one of his students who escaped from China came to him, and he was in a prison camp for 20 years, and he was tortured very frequently and near death, and finally escaped and came and had an audience with His Holiness, and Dalai Lama asked him, what were you most afraid of? Were you afraid that they were going to kill you? And he said, no, I was afraid that I'd stop seeing them as my brothers. the examples exist. We can try really hard to emulate them. We can. And it's not impossible, because the people who are expressing great love, they too are human beings like you, not whales. They're humans. We can achieve this practice. It is possible to forego the violence in our lives, but it'll take a lot of work. And we should start now, before tomorrow. The mind that will help us is that mind of deep appreciation for what we have, for this opportunity. Because when we want more, or we don't want, the seeds of violence are there. That's why the Buddha said, it's attachment, it's desire, it's, that's going to cause problems. When we want more, I'll finish with this one episode from Ryokan, the Japanese monk. In his life, he was well known because he was such a good person, and also a very accomplished artist with his haiku and his calligraphy. His calligraphy was very famous. And a samurai, one of the local lords, came and said, I want to build you a monastery and a temple, and I want you to be the abbot of this temple. He's offering a big thing, right? Ryokan was like this poor monk, and first of all, he came with his entourage, all of his supporters, and they came to Ryokan's little hut, and Ryokan was out picking flowers in the forest somewhere. He was like out. And they waited patiently. Took a while. Later, Ryokan comes with his flowers. And the samurai gives him this offer, which, if it's a samurai, it's not really an offer. It's more like a statement. Ryokan says nothing. And after a few long minutes, takes the paintbrush and the ink and paints a haiku. And the haiku was, the blowing wind has brought me enough leaves to make a fire. That was the haiku. The blowing wind has brought me enough leaves to make a fire. He gave the samurai that, and that was the end of the discussion. Samurai understood. He doesn't want my temple. He doesn't need anything. He has everything. And by having everything, you're beyond threat. And you're beyond desire. Okay? Threat is aversion. Someone's going to take away something. No one can take your mind away from you. So there's no reason to fear, and from fear comes anger. And he didn't need anything. So he was beyond attachment. And attachment and greed is also a source of violence. We want what they have, and I'll kill you to get it. He was beyond attachment. He was beyond aversion. And he knew he was connected. Beyond delusion. So let us follow the footsteps of the great masters, and we'll get to where we need to go. Thank you. before we finish with one couple minutes to sit. Anyone have anything you'd like to say? Question or comment?
About to don't be violent towards someone, tells me to put myself in his position or whatever, or to adopt this point of view that you've mentioned of who am I to, but how about like yourself as a victim of your own like internal violence, and what kind of point of view should be adopted to avoid
Yeah.
it?
Well, by recognizing the harm and the pain and the desire to not, or the aspiration to be free of suffering. And when you feel that sort of self-directed violence, parallel can be compassion. Like, it comes up as a strong karmic condition, a pattern in your mind, and what you can start to cultivate simultaneously is a self-embrace, the compassion. Saying, geez, so much violence, and I'm so sorry. So you can have the anger or judgment. You can have the, geez, I'm sorry it's like this. Just that, I'm sorry. And you're saying sorry to yourself. Sorry, I keep bringing this up. That really feeling sorry is a path to healing. That's the compassion aspect.